Hello.
Hi, Faith. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Early for you.
Well, for me, yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I guess we'll kind of jump right into this. Welcome everybody. My name is Faith Jacobs. I'm your host, and I'd like to introduce my guest today. Now, I don't want to mispronounce your last name.
Don't
How
worry.
how was this said?
It's Slocombe. So I know it doesn't probably look like that, but it's Slocombe.
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 Thank
Yeah,
thank goodness. Thank you.
no
Um,
worries.
but thank you so much for taking some time to join me. And if you could tell us maybe a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and maybe a few of the projects you've been in, we can jump right into my questions.
Yeah, sure, no problem at all. So, the majority of my life is spent in a small booth in padded cell talking to a microphone. So that's my main job. So I'm voice actor, voiceover artist, and so I record for quite a very wide range of projects, everything from TV commercials, radio commercials, corporate explainers that you might see on websites or on YouTube. So if I use any of the terminology that's a bit weird and wonderful out there, then I'll obviously explain what that is. E-learning, when people are doing various training for things, um,
Yes.
video games, when what's called IVR, when you pick up the phone and it says, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, that type of thing.
Okay.
So there's a very wide range, and I just finished. I probably only do one a year. So I recorded an audiobook which is out on Audible. Came out
Nice.
the other week, and I did that before Christmas. And that's so if you imagine like a 30-second radio commercial is like a 100-meter sprint, then an audiobook is definitely the marathon version of that.
Yeah, I myself have dabbled a little bit in the world of voice work. I've been a part of podcasts such as Last Call at Bluebell Cafe. I was cast as Kate Stewart in a couple of fan Doctor Who audio dramas.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
everything you're saying, I basically know.
You know all
Um,
that.
I have definitely been there. So I guess with that, I'll jump into my first question for you, which is every actor has an origin where they begin, and I'm curious, where did you get your start with acting, and was it something you were passionate about when you were younger?
Yeah, I think there's probably a performance in all of us, and some people more than others. And I was always, um, always the sort of one that was that sort of put out front to do performing, and I loved doing plays at school, university. I was in bands, playing music. So I think that aspect was always there, and I probably at a young age wasn't sort of quite sure, whether it wants to be in a band but I was always interested in sound. And I think that's the sort of reoccurring thing for me. Always interested in sound and recording and things like that. And I when I was a student, I did lots of. Well, part of my degree was actually in media, so I did
Huh.
psychology and media. So that's a sort of interesting combination. Yeah,
True.
yeah.
True.
So I'd guess part of doing that was actually the practical side of media. So that was everything from recording studios, to video, to all the sort of various mediums which were back then were analog, all digital now, but the same principles, pretty much apply.
Right. Right.
Um, so I think that was always there. And the weirdest thing, and I was thinking about this, I think everyone has this in their life, these sort of um, signs that sort of flag up that almost like telling you your direction about where you could go,
Yes.
and you choose to listen or don't listen. And I think for a long time, I just didn't, I didn't listen at all. So people, because I'm not the sort of person that takes compliments, really well. I find them awkward. It's lovely, when someone says something, but I find it quite a difficult thing to
Right.
how to react, you know, and so it's, thank you, and that's all nice. And people used to say, throughout my life, "Oh, you got a great voice and that voice and da da da." And
Right.
then when I was in sort of business, which I would be always the one that would do the presentation or stand up and talk, or it was just assumed I'd be the person to do that. And
That was me too, but I'm guessing you had something akin to stage fright.
maybe I think, and I sort of, that's the thing, that's why I do acting as well, because that really sort of does push me out my comfort zone,
I
you know,
agree with that.
doing stuff. And I think that's, doing this sort of role, doing sort of voice acting, is important to do physical acting, because it is acting.
Yeah.
So my sort of background is that's what I did. And I think originally I wanted to get into TV and film, and I did work for like EMI Records as a student for a short time, and I worked at a TV station in the UK called London Weekend Television, which is part of which is changed now. It's part of ITV.
Hmm.
Network, and I worked in the sound department there, with the radio microphones and all that sort of stuff. So I love that. And when I left, I did try to get into that particular field, but there were various changes going on in the industry, so it was quite difficult to get into.
Oh wow.
So I ended up going into working in the drinks industry for about 20 years, and I suppose it's weird because sales and that whole negotiation there's a dance, and there's an act, and there's a performance, and it's weird. It's a different world.
Right.
Um,
There is a whole sort of business side to things, and and it sounds like you really kind of learned a lot from all the different facets and all the different fields that you've been in.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you mentioned voice acting, which leads into the second question for me. Is it's a pretty unique field. How did you roll into that world, firstly? And secondly, you've mentioned quite a list of clients. And you can answer these in two parts or however you wish. Do you prefer character work to commercial work, or do you enjoy a little bit of both?
Right. So, in terms of how I got into the voiceover side of things, well, I suppose I'd worked in the sort of corporate world for quite a long time, and I was thinking I wanted to change and do something I love and sort of go back to those times. But I knew that I couldn't just go and buy a microphone and set up and record, and voila, by magic.
Oh
you know
yeah.
so so there's a respect for that. Is it, like buying a camera and saying, I'm now a professional photographer, that type of thing, so what I did was, I was thinking, right, well, I'm probably going to need to do a number of things, obviously, to sort of pay the bills and all the rest of it. So
Right.
what I did was, I did, on the acting side, I did 2 years worth of on-screen acting training. So I did that every week in the evening, and I just love you know TV and screen acting as well, and I love theatre as well. But I decided to sort of focus on that particular area, and that's been a real, obviously, a massive benefit for when it comes to voice acting for characters and things like that. So I think it's really important that, if that's something you want to do, then actually having training is, by far and above the most important thing. So you've got that direction of where you're going to go, because you could be naturally good at something, but you need that sort of path to how you're gonna direct it.
Right.
So so I did that. The other thing I also did was, I came across someone who was able to be a mentor for me for a year as well, which was incredibly useful, to then sort of talk about everything from the performance side of things right through to the business side of things. Um, Back then, there are various things out there now where you can get a greater indication of what rate should be and what usage should be, and all those sort of the sort of nuts and bolts of voiceover. But that was useful to have someone to say, right, this is, what do you think of this audition, and what do you think of this, and what shall I do? And I cut a demo with them, and all that sort of stuff. So that was useful.
Wow.
Um, and then so that's that. I started sort of building that from scratch. So I didn't have any clients. I had nothing, no website. This is all from scratch.
Yeah.
So steep learning curve, and then the other thing that I was and still do as well is presenting as well. So I go and do some live presenting. So I've got quite an eclectic mix. And then and then I just sort of kept doing that, and then sort of making contacts and getting repeat clients, and all the various sort of
And
entries into doing that.
that's the goal, honestly.
Yeah.
I've been interested in this since I was about the age of 12,
Mm.
and I discovered it because of the world of, I don't know if you're aware of like what fan dubbing is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that's how I discovered it. And I was very, very young, and my brain decided I want to be a voice actress. um,
Yeah.
but I didn't have a mic. I didn't have I was a young child, but I knew that I wanted to be behind the mic in some way. So I understand that starting from the ground up, I've cut together a decent demo of my own. I've put together my own website. I've done a lot of things, and it's never it's never easy to even try and break in, especially when you're not someone who was a part of the business or had or knew somebody who was in the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which leads into my third question. And I think you sort of kind of answered it a little bit. Was the acting world isn't always an easy one because there's dry seasons, there's ups and downs, and when the world of gaming and commercials is always shifting, do you ever go back to local theater to stay connected to acting in some form?
Well, I mean, I've got an agent for acting, so so I suppose in terms of the sort of focus, I do 80-90% of the time is actually voice acting, and the rest is sort of acting and presenting. Um, so I sort of have that balance, and it's strange because you do get these peaks and troughs, and then there's a very weird phenomenon, which is this: is if I go out now, um, then and go a distance away, I will get an email saying, "Are you available for a session today?" It's the weird, honestly, it's the weirdest thing. And I think being self-employed, you have to have this faith that, look, you've done it for this amount of time, the
Right.
work's going to come in. The phasing could be different. Like, last year I had some sort of really big jobs very early on, with sort of like TV commercials in Germany, and I recorded a Netflix, Netflix is a joke, the comedy
Yeah,
festival they
yeah,
have.
I did see that you were a part of that when I was looking at some of your demos and stuff,
Yeah.
some of the things you've done.
Yeah, so you have these high points, and and I think you just have to say, look, these things aren't going to happen every week or every day, and they're nice surprises. So I think the important thing you have to do is you have to enjoy the process.
Yes.
They there was an interesting interview with a guy who's a neuroscientist in one of the sort of the big, American MIT, or one of the big, universities in America. And he was saying that, these highs that people must get if they win an Oscar or something like that. What after the event and the parties and the interviews, what do you do the next day? You know, what does that feel like from like.
Oh, what's the word? It's a dopamine crash.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it's literally like, stuffing your face full of load of sugar, and then,
Yes.
"Whoa," and then, "Woof," and so I think, the interesting thing they said was that, to sort of keep focused and to keep happy and all that sort of thing, it's about enjoying the whole process,
Yeah,
and in not doing just, "Oh, I'm going for the biggies,"
yeah,
so
I have a mentor who's taught me so much over the last 3 years and taken me so far. And he said that all the time. He goes, if you're going to, be in the arts, you really got to enjoy that journey,
yeah.
not just the premieres, not just the final product. The act of doing is really what you gotta enjoy.
Yeah, and then I remember there was an awards ceremony. I think it was like a BAFTAs quite a long time ago, and there were two guys. I think actually one of them was Stephen Fry, and his Hugh Laurie. I think who was in
Yeah.
the series Dogs. So they originally were won lots of things, but they were a double act and had a sort of series on TV, and I think it won like a BAFTA. And he said the best thing ever, which was, because everyone was going up and thanking everyone, and all the stuff that goes on.
Right.
And he said, "Isn't it great just to be working?" And I thought, yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
that's what it's about. So So yeah, I mean, listen, we all have our worries and demons and things like that. But I think if you, as long as you keep moving forward, you keep trying new things, looking for new opportunities. What's the classic Albert Einstein thing, isn't it? He said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and
Yes.
expecting different results. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think we're all in that hamster wheel sometimes of
Is it
spinning
ever
around.
come? Is it ever gonna come?
Yeah, yeah, and so you just got to step off that. So yeah, I think that's the really important thing to do, because you will find there are certain periods where it is quiet, and then of course it's very it's you then want to speak to other people who do a similar thing, and
Yeah.
then the problem is they could be like you, which is sort of reassuring. You go, oh yeah, or then go, oh no, I'm really busy, and you go, oh, what am I doing wrong? And it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
compare and
You're
despair.
right. You're
Never
right.
never do that. Because
Yeah.
tomorrow you could pick up a national TV commercial, and you didn't even know that last week.
100%. I feel the same. Like I remember coming to my mentor and being like, "I'm going to go for this audition and I know I'm not going to get it." And he looks at me and he goes, "You know they want you to be good, right?" He goes, "I want you to go after that audition and you're going to say, 'Forget it. I'm going to do it.'" And I booked last call at Bluebell Cafe because
Mm,
sometimes I think you need those people in your life just to push you to go, "Yeah, don't you quit. Don't you
yeah,
stop." You
yeah.
know? Um,
Just do it and don't worry about it.
yeah.
So I mean, if you've been asked to audition as well, I mean, as opposed to being on a site that maybe you have to pay to be part of to audition, if that's your thing. If you're being asked to audition for something, then that's your job.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you're doing that, and that means that you're a long way along doing that. And it's weird because sometimes if I think a lot of people probably do this. You have a good year, and then you wake up on the 1st of January and you go, "Oh, gotta do it all over again." And, where's it gonna come from? So you have all these sort of things, and I think back to, not last year, year before, where, I had that same thought, and then a couple of weeks, I got an audition, which I did, and then I got a small part in, All Creatures Great and Small, which is on TV here, and I think it's
Oh,
on
yes.
PBS in the States.
Yeah,
Um
it's on Masterpiece, and I was trying so hard to actually find a place to at least sample it because I was quite curious about your silver screen work as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was great, and it was, great to sort of film with the main characters, on that particular show. It was a remake of a very popular one that I think was, in the UK, but this has equally been gone down really, really well, and, I don't know, I just enjoy that process. It's an interesting one, isn't it? That,
Yeah.
you're you start off the scene, or nothing's gonna progress until you deliver, and you've got 40, 50 people behind you, sorry, yeah, well, in front of you on the camera in the middle, you know
Yeah.
um, and and speeds out, all that sort of stuff, action, and boom, you got to do that, and I like that. It's a weird sort of pressure, and I think maybe you have to be slightly masochistic to sort of like that. But
Yeah.
I love that whole process.
Oh,
The whole. It's nice to see it on TV and all that sort of stuff. And I watch it maybe once and that's it. And I'm not
yeah.
going to keep watching it.
Yeah,
But enjoy the process. Yeah.
it's never about the final product, it's all about the process. To switch gears a little bit,
Yeah.
um, I was going through obviously your resume and stuff, and I noticed that you had been leading protagonist in two games, and obviously we've been mentioning you've done quite a bit
Yeah.
on the silver screen. Um, do you have a dream role of a different caliber that you have yet to go for on the character side of things than what
Uh,
you've done previously?
yes, I suppose, I mean, because I've had, main character roles and a lead role with the Mr. Childish one,
Yeah.
so I think it's just I haven't done any mocap at all, and I always think
Oh,
that would be a fascinating thing to do.
that'd be amazing.
I'm not gonna jump off buildings, right? You know, but I think I think, something like a mocap thing in like a AAA game, and I think the ultimate would be then someone recognizes you for that,
Yeah.
and you are that character, and you embody that character, whether you love them or hate them, it doesn't matter, you know, that people buy into that. And so I wouldn't say like it's this particular genre or this particular game, but I'd say if it was a sort of a character that people sort of like, well, I don't know, really got into, and it became this evolving story, that a lot of these sort of games can sometimes get to.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I think that would be an interesting one to do, and it is pushing it. It's interesting recording sometimes, and everyone does it in different ways. But you have to sometimes switch emotions pretty quickly, and because obviously you're doing a lot of recording,
Yeah.
um, and whereas if you're acting in whatever capacity, there's often an arc that the character's going to go through before they get angry or upset, and that's going to be, it's not going to chop and change too much. It's going to go in that particular area. Whereas suddenly it might be right in this bit you're now shouting above gunfire.
Yeah.
Now, now you're quite pensive, and
Yeah.
now you're a bit worried. Oh no, no, no! You're whispering now because we're just coming up to the enemy gate or something.
Right.
Um, so and boom, boom, boom. You've got to do that. And then the funniest one I think we had was when I was recording Chernobylite, which is out on PlayStation. On that was it was accents and things like that. So I was played two characters in that, and
Hmm.
one is a sort of yeah, I suppose a sort of a slight, a more exaggerated version of me, which is the best way to be. And then the other one was, well, they sent me this voice reference, which was, and I clicked on it, and it was, they said, this is the sort of voice reference we're looking for, and it was Vin Diesel.
Oh my.
I was like, okay. So, so I spent a lot of time with sort of like growly, deep, general sort of American accent, and,
Right,
just,
right.
and then they might sort of switch, and then we tried something maybe in, because the Chernobyl, do you remember the drama series Chernobyl, was
I'm
out as
aware
well?
of Chernobyl. I know that was made by Craig Mazin. I've not had a chance to sit down and see it yet.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, those ones. Whether do you have a Russian accent or do you have a normal accent? Because then it's reflective of, obviously there would be different accents, in that language as well. But yeah, so we might switch up accents on those sort of things. So
How easy is that for you? Or how difficult, I should ask.
I think on a lot of these things, I think you have to know your limitations, and and say, right, this is what I can deliver, and this is what I'm going to do. So I don't do impressions.
Right.
Um, I'm going to build a character based on this, and this is how it's they're going to sound in terms of either age or experience, or whatever it's going to be. You know, Sometimes having a picture is really useful, or sort of just getting into the mindset of what this person's going to be like. What are they going to be thinking about? All those sort of things.
So my next question kind of follows along with the idea of like being different kinds of characters. We all love being that force for good, but on the flip side, of course, we always have a villain. If you could cast yourself in the ideal villain role for the fun of it, would it be an on-camera role or a video game role?
Oh, do you know, I'd love to be a James Bond villain.
I was just about to say.
Do you know? So I mean, I think I'm too old to be James Bond. James Bond. I'm too old to be that. I think. But yes, I would, one of those ones that people go, oh,
Yes.
a really good baddie, because everyone loves a good baddie, don't they? So so
100%.
that would be, and ultimately, yeah, of course, that could be a game as well, because there have been obviously Bond franchises
There
for
have been
video
a
games and
couple,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
007, GoldenEye.
I love those lines, isn't it? Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's like, so, but the thing is that, is not to be, because you're in the danger of the sort of Austin Powers,
Oh
you
God. Yeah.
know, evil, you know, that's evil. Sorry, as I said, don't do any impressions, and now I'm trying desperately to do bad
You're
impressions of,
trying to.
yeah. It sounds more like Kenneth Williams from Carry On films, but anyway. So I don't know. I think, yeah. So I think if you're going to be the villain, it's the understated, isn't it? It's the understated, with menace.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
true.
the Silence of the Lambs. It's never rah rah rah. You know,
Yeah,
like,
you could always, I mean, you could always be something like I feel like with video games, you can put on a myriad of villain voices. You could
yeah,
be something as crazy out of like Ratchet and Clank, or you could
mm,
be something as serious as a villain out of The Last of Us.
yeah.
There's quite a wide range there. Whereas with sometimes with on camera, you're more limited to how you look. My
I
next,
think it's also not saying so. You see, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That what works with those sort of characters on screen is that silence.
yes,
It's powerful, isn't it? You know,
it can.
um, you do that in video, and I don't notice that too much in video games as much as it could be, because
There's a lot of reliance on I would say probably on dialogue
yeah,
and more if we're talking motion capture games, more physicality. But if we're
yeah,
speaking more of like the cartoony side of what we think of when we think of video games, yeah, I can agree with that entirely.
yeah. And I think that's, it's an interesting one with doing the last show, Mr. Chardish. That particular show, it was really interesting. The developers based in Poland, Punk Notion, and the lovely team to work with, and I think just going for something very different, which was this sort of narrative story based. There's no guns, there's no action, there's no
Yeah,
zombies, it's not relying on any of that at all. It's purely story driven about this sort of relationship between a dying director really, and this sort of lost love, and going through those emotions. So that was a good opportunity to sort of like get into those places, which is, uh, sort of quite sort of the heartfelt, angry, frustrated,
yeah.
those sort of things, and playing him, and that involved lots of different facets.
That
So that was really stretching to do that one.
that
Yeah,
game really was amazing to me, and I recently purchased it like not that long ago, and I've been going through and playing it, replaying levels. First off, that was an amazing performance.
oh, thank you.
And the story was just it was so endearing to me. And I'm curious, what what was that experience like for you, like landing that role and playing such a complicated and layered character like him? Well, like what was the thought process to bring to life not only someone who shares your profession, but also goes through such emotional highs and lows all within the span of like an hour of gameplay?
I think what you've got to do is you've got to bring something of you to that. Obviously you're not that character, but you've got to take some of those, um, those emotions, and you've got to then. I mean, there's a really interesting example I think we did. I remember when it was with acting training, which was, you had to think of, and if you try this yourself, and you video yourself doing it, it's you can notice things about yourself you'd never known. So, um, if you think about the saddest time and saddest thing in your life that you could possibly ever think of, um, and make that really real, just think of that, and as you're thinking of that, just explain the recipe of the favorite food you like to cook. Something so bland, banal, about, yeah, chop this up and, all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And the performance you get is so sad. You suddenly, you,
Yeah.
you make this, and I remember doing this in the class, and one of the girls was like, oh my God, I'm really upset. And I'm just saying chopping onions and doing this, and, because but what you convey is those micro emotions, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how you get that into your voice. Like when you're speaking now, we're going to have broken bits and silence and thought, and and that's what you got to do with those lines. You got to take them, and you can't just go. "Duh, duh, 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 duh." I'm reading that. It's why are they saying that,
Yeah.
and they're gonna hesitate, and so I think for each of those particular things, then what I did was, I suppose, an element of sort of method to that, where I'm getting into the emotion of things that in my life that reflect those particular things or have happened to me, and then using that through my voice then to deliver, whatever's happening at that particular point,
It really
So,
did, and I think one of my favorite moments throughout the game, there's the various interview recordings with the character. I think my favorite thing that you did was you paused at one moment, and the interviewer goes to Mr. Chardish, "Are you all right?" And you almost hear the hesitation in the performance, and it just, as a voice actor myself and someone who has directed voice actors, I applaud just the ability to make that feel so present without us having to see the character, because we do see him but not really with the interviews. And so, like, that was phenomenal.
oh,
To me.
thank you.
um let's see, another question. So, as we're talking about voices for video games, how much harder is it than the works you've done on camera? Is it really as challenging as most would expect, or would you say it's on par with audiobook recordings?
I think it's, well, I suppose audiobook depends on the type of audiobook. So if I did do an audiobook that had, lots of different, accents in it, different characters, um, because you've got to make that decision. Are you going to do that accent? Are you gonna speak, in that particular voice? Or are you just going to sort of raise your voice up slightly to say, "You walk down the street," said Mrs. Jones. I don't, so that type of thing. Or are you gonna do, but then you've got to be really consistent, and know if you've got multiple characters, all right, how do they speak? How
Right.
do, if they spoke in chapter one, and then they don't appear until chapter six, you're gonna have to go back and you're gonna have to, right, what's going to be the continuation on of that character? So I recognize that. So I think that's difficult if it's multiple characters, um, but it's definitely stretching for video games.
Right.
And I'm still learning a lot, because it's very easy just to go into your comfort zones and say, right, I can do the baddie like this, I'm going to be like that, and then getting those nuances and different things in your performance. So
Right.
I'm still working on, those type of things, and say, well, how would I audition for that? Or if I got that part, what would I do? And how would I sound for that? And, so I think it's just a constant process of learning, um,
That makes sense.
so I think early on, I think if you do this, you have to realize your limitations and say, okay, look, if I'm doing accents, what are the accents that I can do and do well? And people will go, yeah, that's fine. And if you can't do them, don't do it, because the problem
Yeah.
is that's what's going to stand out,
Yeah.
and they're going to go,
You, and you maintain it for long periods of time. I mean, I would say that, so when I was cast for Kate Stewart, the casting director asked me if I could do a British accent, and I went, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." Um, I,
yeah,
my best. So what I literally had to do was I had to go and find, there's someone in New York City who is an accent coach who specifically is from the UK and deals in teaching that to his students.
oh right, okay,
I had to learn the basic vowel pronunciation of the way, like, they, because the director wasn't looking for like a specific accent. They wanted me to basically imitate Gemma Redgrave. And I was like, oh my,
yeah,
And so I spent the day basically learning the very pronounced vowel pronunciation within the accent,
yeah,
just so I could, because it was my first time even learning it.
yeah,
And I maintained it for quite a long time, for having learning that in 2 days.
yeah.
it was quite a challenge. But I know that I can maintain for at least a short time a decent Irish accent or a decent Scottish accent.
Yeah.
But as far as the British one goes, that's going to take a little time.
It's difficult, and also what you know, if you're going for that, what type? Because, you know, you could have, even in a region, you can have different accents
Yes,
and
there's
different words that are used, you know?
mhm, and that's the thing. Over there, there's so many different regions, so many different accents. I knew that they were just looking for something basic and simple, but not something that was, you know, your the stereotype that you will hear in like a comedy show. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But and I didn't want to do that either. I was like, well, I know people who are over there. I can't, you know. Um, you
I
know,
know.
to
It's
not want to offend half the UK.
well, and you know, it's I think it's you do see, you know, when people do cast for things, they often do ask for, you know, native accents of, you know, so if you know, you come from there, you live from there, that's you. Um, because there's nothing worse than, you know, than putting on an accent and someone going, what is that? You know? But you notice it for American accents as well, and sometimes you know, there's used to be a lot of just general American, and now they're being sort of quite specific in terms of states, you know, that,
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
for, East Coast or West Coast or, but yeah, American accent, I mean, you know, is not, you know, the easiest thing to do because sometimes you know, you might start off in one area and then, you know,
And
you're heading deep south
oh,
before you know what you Alabama.
I
No,
have a I
yeah.
have an actor friend over in the UK who was in the States recently, and I was learning the accent, the British accent for the role as he was over here, and I was like, man, your accents are, oh my god. He was like, don't worry, I'm practicing my
Yeah, I know. You know, so because we've got so many regional accents, but there are, you know, and there are in the States as well,
yeah,
although, you know, and it's just the ear to hear it sometimes,
yes,
you know, even in Yorkshire, where, you know, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you'll have known the Yorkshire accent quite a lot.
oh yeah, yeah.
And so
Especially,
Mark Addy's accent, you know, for his he played the king, you know, in the first season, and then Sean Bean's got a Sheffield accent, and
yeah,
this is, you know,
because
that's his,
funny,
you know,
I have a character for my show who, when I was recasting for him for this season, I was like, I need a specifically Sheffield, Yorkshire accent,
yeah,
and try,
winter is coming.
trying to cast that was hard.
Yeah.
um, my next question is what do you think is the biggest challenge you've faced in your pursuit of this, and how have you kept yourself motivated to jump on opportunities even though the possibility of them not paying out can sometimes be a reality?
I think it's persistence, and you know, you've got to keep going for it. It's incredibly competitive, as you could imagine,
Oh yeah.
um, because you know, the interesting thing with the pandemic was that a lot of actors who were traditionally stage or screen, you know, moved into voice acting. And you know, that swelled the numbers of people who are voice actors. I'm not saying that they all stayed in that or that became full
No,
time.
'cause it's not easy, as you well know.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's highly competitive, and sort of getting into that, and I think it's about being, you know, persistent and building those contacts and relationships. So, for instance, in Chernobylite, I'd actually worked with the developer, before in a previous game where my voice wasn't in the final cut because that was the publisher's decision about who they cast, but I was, I can't remember what the term was, like a keynote or not keynote, but, basically when you've got the action, is that when it goes to another cutscene that the dialogue is gonna work and you know, what triggers whatever the audio is gonna be.
Yeah.
So, you know, for a couple of years, I actually helped them out with that, and that's obviously as part of the development, and then, you know, they would have revoiced that in the end. But, you know, I stayed in contact and then and then from that was a game called Get Even, which was on PlayStation, and then I
Ah,
stayed in
I'm aware.
contact. Yeah, so I did, so I think somewhere there was some police in that. I think somewhere because we're trying to get some differentiation, so we had everything from sort of psychiatric patients to policemen. So somewhere on a file is a load of Yorkshire Yorkshire policeman because I think right, it needs to have a different accent now,
Right.
you know. So, but so that developer was like, oh well, you knew what you could do, and then obviously got cast for two characters in that particular
Yeah.
game. So I think it's one of those ones you just got to keep going, and then it depends whether if you get a lucky break as well,
That that's true.
you know,
That's
you know,
definitely true. Rolling back around to Mr. Chardish, I'm curious on the subject of the game.
yeah.
Were you given a copy to play, or have you at least seen it played? And what were your thoughts on the finished product and story? Was it anything at all like you had imagined in your mind, provided they didn't give you like images or anything to really kind of go off of? Is what I'm getting at.
Well, I mean, on the development, they did send, sort of early sort of creative shots of what they were trying to achieve, so they could understand the conveying, to get into the character and what they're trying to achieve, and also in the music as well. So I find music actually that's for any voiceover as well. If you put music on, it's the best thing. If you get the
Or
music,
uh,
and I'll record with that in my headphones, and because is it going to be fast, slow, dramatic,
yeah.
light, bubbly, whatever. um so I think there's that, and then so really when it came to then the final product, and I watched a lot of the walkthroughs, because what I'm really interested in those things is I like watching walkthroughs, because they don't know who the people are on the voices. If we're not talking about very famous, really famous people who it's been advertised they're the main character in the game, or whatever.
Right.
um, is when they then comment on the voice acting, or they answer it, and so someone says like, don't go there or something, and they go, yeah, oh yeah, I'm not going to go there. Oh, or whatever. So they almost like they're having this dialogue with the audio, or reacting to it. And I love that, because that's sort of secret where it's you, and someone's you know either put a comment about it, or they've reacted to it. So the final product was what I was expecting, because I'd seen so much of the actual work that they'd sort of produced beforehand. But I just thought it was just so unique. It was just and very difficult, for an independent game developer to
Yeah.
to go out and create something like that. I mean, games take for those people who maybe aren't involved in this, who love playing games, but probably
Mm,
know that they take years. They take
they
absolutely
do.
years.
They do. And sometimes, my favorite games are in this genre. Mr. Charters was up my alley because I love the indie scene of gaming. Because sometimes I
Yeah,
feel that it's not that I dislike the AAA scene, but I feel like sometimes we see a lot of the same things.
yeah,
And indie world of gaming is so unique and incredible, and also thankless sometimes, because you're not always getting pushed out by the people who are publishing you, and
yeah,
you're sometimes not getting picked up by the mainstream audience because of what they expect a game to be,
yeah.
if you know
And
what I mean.
yeah, and it's nice to be past those past those titles, really. Um, I did Assassin's Creed, and it's nice watching, because it was China. They had an offshoot one which was about China and India,
Yeah.
sort of, and so I played just various characters in that, and it's just nice to sort of get to a walkthrough and see your name as a credit,
Yeah.
as part of that, and you're thinking that was really good, and that actually happened quite early on from having left a previous world to doing that, and I'm thinking, "All right, I'm here," like, making noises of exertion, noises of getting hit, or emotes, like, ooh, all the sounds you gotta make when the physicality sort of sounds, and so I thought, "Well, that's absolutely brilliant, love that."
Yeah.
So
I'm curious. You've also been part of We Happy Few, which
yes.
very much like BioShock, if you know what BioShock is. What was that like recording for like a horror-esque kind of game?
Do you know, I had no idea what that was going to be about, and it was really any sort of, some sort of background voices, because it just started off as this sort of really weird, um, uh, sort of odd game, and, and then they changed the look of it, and they changed what they were doing, and it sort of
Really?
yeah, it was, I think it was very different from, the initial sort of plan for it, I think, was very different from the final product, which was quite dark, wasn't it, really, when you sort of think about it?
Yeah.
And I'm there going, "Lovely day for it," Lovely
Yes,
day for it, and
yes. I remember because when I heard you as Mr. Chardish, I was like, I swear I have heard
yeah,
this somewhere. And then I remembered you were in We Happy Few in the room with the main character,
yeah.
your second protagonist or one of the secondary characters who's in that room
Yeah.
in the trailer.
Yeah, that's right, and I think I did some police in there, so I'd probably
Yes,
be beating up the characters, so but yeah, it was just that I was just saying, "What is it? Lovely day for it, lovely day." And of course, that was a live they did those as live sessions, and so they saying, "Oh, you just try it in this way," and so there's so many different sort of versions of that, so you never know what that was gonna end up to become, and I think that's the start of things being quite different, wasn't it? With sort of, how games were
yeah,
before in terms of storylines. Um, but yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's so eclectic, and I did one for like there's a Chimera. I think it's a Chimera. So like there's an app, free app game. So
oh
I
yeah,
did characters on that.
oh
So
yeah.
you find yourself and you're thinking, oh yeah, I've done a few of those, and then you start adding them up, and you go, well yeah, I've done quite quite a few of these, And I suppose I didn't set out. This is the weird thing. I didn't set out to go. Do you know what? I'm going to get into. I was literally. I'm going to try all the genres of voice acting,
Yeah,
and when that comes along, uh, it's an interesting one, and we did I mean the Childish one. I recorded without any of the other actors,
was
so I
that
actually got their audio,
were
and
you
what
were you with Mary Reed?
no, no,
No.
no, not at all. And, so I got a lot of her audio, and then I then put that into the audio so I could react to it.
Okay.
So I would literally sort of I know it's like it's a lot of work, but, put in the audio and say, "Right, well, I'm gonna give myself that much time to then speak," and then I can then react to how
Yeah.
she's talking, 'cause that's important.
It
With
gave
with
it
Sorry.
actually and you're fine. I just didn't wanna lose this thought. It actually, and I had wondered that because your reactions to her were so realistic and perfect. Like, they were you've seen Skyrim,
Yeah,
and you know how sometimes that can go when the voice actors are not together.
yeah.
Get that feel that you weren't with her.
Hmm. I think that's why it's so important to either, I mean, ideally, want to be with other people, but of that doesn't happen. Sometimes you just there's the audio and you're going to record it. But I think it's so important because if if you took a conversation as a transcript from a conversation you have with one of your friends and get someone else to record it, it'd sound really odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
"So how are you?" "I'm fine." You know? Right, okay. So, it would be so I think that's really important. But the interesting thing with Genobelite was we actually had, a live session, with, we had the developer, and then we had, two other guys as well, two main characters and myself, and, that felt more like a play because we're reacting to each other.
Yeah.
You can interrupt and you can talk over and
Yeah.
however you want to do that. So, yeah. So if it's a field, if you're listening to this and you want to get into this, be prepared for Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
You know?
That's yeah.
And that's the funny. I remember the first time I sort of saw a script for a thing, and I was going, okay, the file number and character and emotion and notes and what's just happened and
Yes.
yeah, so it's an interesting one. And then the other interesting one I think also for voice acting is learning how to swear and cuss, effectively.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know?
It has to be like I
I'm
mean,
not gonna do it now, but I'm
all
just saying.
right. Everything.
But because there's all those human emotions, that's what you're trying to convey.
Yeah.
Um, because I remember, the early days of video games where there wasn't obviously a lot of memory for, especially cartridge, there wasn't a lot of
Oh,
memory for, yeah. So, it was more the, finish him, or the Tekken and the, like, whoa, and that was it, wasn't it? It was all just a
yeah.
couple of words.
It
But
was
now it's a
one
film, isn't it? You know.
it is like a film, and and some people would even say that sometimes the world of gaming with motion capture as their tool kind of escalated the video game world to rival the world of movies.
Yeah.
Um, and on that, as we're speaking a little bit about games and Mr. Chardish, I'm curious when you were recording, for Robert and watching that story unfold in the booth, what were you kind of hoping players might take away from that story through your performances?
I think it was just, what I'd like them to take away is their sort of reflection on, I suppose relationships and those emotions and the jealousy and the hurt and basically sort of live through the eyes of that character.
Yeah.
So to feel those, to feel of being alone and, when there were the sort of robots, which is, you know, um, that section of the game where, the two robots in the factory
Yeah. Similar.
is so much, it's one where you think, because I obviously saw some of the, the action for how this is going to be,
Yeah.
and then boom, that I won't give away the ending about it, but that
Right.
emotion, the
Yes.
emotion of it is really like, so I want people to have that shock of, of their feeling, and people, and also, even the feelings like, where's this going?
Yeah.
What's this about? Curiosity, and so you keep people guessing, because I suppose in a lot of games you have a process where you're on a mission, you've got to follow this, you've got to do that, and you're going to encounter something, and whereas I think on that type of game, when you can sort of go to the various scenes and cutscenes, you don't know what you're going to expect,
Absolutely.
and if you play it again, you probably have a different, oh, right, you'll have a different thought process on it, because it's like, that's not what I was expecting, you
Yeah,
know.
I did a
Yeah.
little review of it actually quite recently, and it was quite impactful. And I won't give away what happens in daydreaming, but
Hmm.
daydreaming was where I completely fell in love with Robert and Ella, and
Yeah.
I was sold, I was hooked, I was invested to see how this was gonna
Oh, that's brilliant.
with daydreaming. Um, and so as we're continuing with Mr. Chardish questions, this one is kind of in like two or three parts, and first two of them are what was your favorite scenes to record as Robert, and what was one of the hardest scenes to read, and why?
Right. I think, so one of the hardest ones was the conversations where I'm talking in rhyme.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
daydreaming.
Yes.
Okay.
Without that being too the rhythm of it
Yeah.
is to sort of keep that flow, without it sort of going into a sort of like just the same sort of pattern, and
Yeah.
to sort of break that up. So that was quite, that was probably quite difficult. I know that sounds really weird because you think, well, that sort of flows and it moves, but
No, I could tell that
yeah,
probably one of the tougher things to do is trying to speak in rhyme while it's just you in the booth.
yeah, and without it sounding I'd call it sort of primary school, or you'd say elementary school. That sort
Yeah,
of, nursery rhymey. That it's because it's not meant to be that at all, but you've got to still convey the movement and the motion. So that was quite difficult to do. And then the one scene we saying the one that I really enjoyed to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
The one I really, really enjoyed doing was the interview, because I sort of were getting into that. Well, how is ill? What's he actually suffering from, and
yeah,
how long's this been going on, and what could it be? And I think that there's so much in there, because you've got that regret,
yeah.
and you've got that realization that it's coming to an end, and what might have been. And so I really enjoyed that part. And again, I didn't find that easy. Well, none of it's,
No,
and actually you probably shouldn't be easy, because otherwise you can get lazy in terms of what you're going to do. But
right.
I felt that having that,
That
where yeah. Sorry, I'm doing it now because I'm thinking about it. It's weird, isn't it?
that last
You
that
know.
last in like that last interview like segment at the end, that monologue that that I'm not gonna obviously spoil it for anybody who hasn't played, but like
Yeah.
that bit will never fail to get me. I've played the game twice, and
Wow.
that performance there was it was heartfelt. It was so it was so what not conveying. What's the word?
Uh,
I know the right word, but like it was compelling. That's the word. It was
ah,
compelling and it was powerful and it really was incredible.
yeah.
Um, and this was I kind of wanted to add something in there. Were there any funny flubs or bloopers you can recall from the recording sessions that may never see the light of day, but
Oh,
you
there
know
always is. Many, many. Well, I know some people sort of do themselves a blooper reel. I'm like, oh, right, I'm going to delete that one. I was going, what's going on here? And yeah, when you sort of like lose yourself, or you mispronounce certain words, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh no, right? And how did that one come about? And you obviously, you do check everything through,
Right,
and
right,
then you might have some sort of additional, because if you're doing some things offline, doing some pickups as well, and they
right.
go, you said you actually said this rather than that. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, right, that changes the meaning completely.
Yes.
So you know by the weird thing is, I don't know what it is about our brains, is we tend to put in extra words sometimes,
Yeah. We have
um,
a fill on our brains.
yeah, like, I'm like editing as we go along. But yeah, there was quite a few, and especially when I was doing as you say, doing the sort of rhyming couplets, and I go, no, 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 oh, well, and you're like, go, what's going on? So I'd sort of run out of steam.
Oh,
Or the other one is, so when Robert's giving that interview, obviously, he's affected by his illness.
right, right.
And so I sort of take a break from that, because I was aching after some of those ones, because I'm sort of getting that feeling of him suffering from whatever he's suffering, and sort of like have to watch the voice, and because I'm coughing. Uh,
Yeah. Right, right.
but coughing that it sounds like I'm not going,
Yeah.
like sort of proper, proper, proper sort of coughs, and getting back into that. So yeah, so you have to look after the old voice. So
But yeah, no, I all the time when I'm editing my actors when they're sending me stuff, we have had so many flubs.
yeah, yeah.
At one point, help became I'm in help, and I'm like, wait, where did I'm in help come from? I get a kick out of it, and I'm like, it's okay if there's flubs or bloopers. I'll probably save them and put that out there. Um,
Yeah, there are, there are sometimes the best bits are actually the directions. If you could get those into the reel, that would be really funny. So,
yeah,
um, we had, I remember there's one direction where they're saying, right, so what's going to happen now is you're in this room and it's going to fill with gas, and then you need to then choke, and are you going to pass out? And then the last thing is a swear word, right? So I'm not going to say it on your podcast,
Right.
but so doing that, whatever, and then I say, and then deliver this swear word, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this brilliant discussion between the writer, developer, and about what would be the right swear word to have if you're just about to pass out
Oh my God.
on gas. Should we try this? So we did all these various things, and then of course, as a to add the to the character, you might have things where you're running, so you're going to have exertion sounds and
Right.
breathing, and you've been running and all that sort of stuff, so you've got to make all that sort of noise. And I think, gosh, also the names of files, so you're sending files through called
Mhm.
asphyxiated, or you're thinking, if anyone like intercepts this, be thinking,
FBI.
right, FBI would be like, right, what's going on here? What's being distributed? And no, this is just So I sometimes think it's not just the bloopers; it's sometimes the directions really,
Yeah, yeah.
really funny, or where or it's been ones where it said things like, it's been a really long direction, so you did this and da da ba ba da, and it does that, and they're here, and but they're speaking over this, and da da da, and then so it goes on about a
Yeah.
minute about this is setting the scene, and then you go, shh, they're coming.
That's
And that's the line.
I've done that. I've had long stretches of description, like you're in a room and there's gold this and there's that, and he's picking up a book and throwing it over his shoulder or something, and then it's like, okay, moving to the next scene.
And in your own time.
Okay, you're on time.
Yeah.
Um,
So
on
I think it would be lovely to have a direction reel, wouldn't it? Which you'd never get, but it would be really funny to
yeah,
get.
it would be on our last two questions. I promise you, and thank you so much again for doing this.
Oh, no problem at all. It's enjoying it, so it's good.
This has been amazing. You to talk with you and to do this. So, question 11: would you ever be part? This is sorry, that's my numbering. I did not mean to say that. Would you ever? There's my blooper reel.
There we go.
The number out loud.
And Mark.
Check the gate.
Yeah.
Would you ever want to be part of an animated television series or jump at the world of animated films?
Oh, do you know, I would, and I have auditioned for, so I don't know, can I say? I don't
Can you
know.
say, or will you just get in trouble?
I don't know. Do you know, I have auditioned for, should we say, some well-known franchises
Nice.
out there. And it's gonna be one of these ones where everyone's gonna be auditioning for these,
Of
so,
course.
but to be asked is lovely, because if someone listens, you don't know whether a year down the line someone goes, "I remember someone who's actually would be, they'd suit this part." So, yeah, I would love to be in any of those particular series, the thing is, because it was certainly, well, it would certainly pay the bills, pay off all the bills, wouldn't it? If you get
Yeah.
one of those big jobs,
And you'd be lucky if it's recurring, I mean, if it's a
Yeah.
recurring character, not only are you having one session, but you're having multiple sessions.
Yeah, I would do that, but I think there is I do the people who that's their thing. They're very, very talented to deliver those particular characters and to be able to do that. But I'd love to have a go at that type of thing. And the ones I've gone for has been sort of, I think, sort of new, almost like it's sort of guest character that
Yeah.
they're going to put into a series and things like that. So they'd be great fun to do. And also just have that experience, because whether that would be remote, probably have to be remote if it was in the States. But
It's
if it was something big, it'd be lovely to go to a studio to do something like that.
yeah, I agree. And on our final question, of course, we've kind to wrap up, because I do not want to keep you all day, but the last things last. How are things going in the current year for you as an actor? Obviously, NDAs exist for a reason, so please be careful how you respond.
Oh,
This,
I know. It's
but
NDAs about series, and the funniest thing is that post COVID, obviously, you had a lot of the world of self taping in terms of on camera audition sort of massively increased
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. So I did these things where, because one of my kids would come in and go, I'm just auditioning. What are you auditioning for, Dad? And then and then it's like, it's an NDA, can't tell anyone, but you can tell your wife, and
Right.
but then I think if I say what it's for and it's a jinx, and I remember that I auditioned for a very popular series on Netflix, and I and that part didn't appear when the new season came out, and I thought, oh
Oh,
right, well that's that doesn't feel too bad, does it? So, but I think in terms of it started off well. So I've been doing. As I say, I finished an audiobook just before Christmas that came out
mm,
on the 19th. So that's called The Road. So it's basically about Roman roads in Britain and the sort of
mm,
social history.
nice.
Um, but as I say, that's a 7.5 hour audiobook.
Oh, wow.
That's quite, yeah, quite a lot of stuff. So, and then I've been doing a lot of radio ads as well, and some e-learning and instructional stuff, things like airport security. So quite interesting things that go on, for training and things like that.
Well, that's
Um,
um,
so it's
I mean,
been good. And then, with the acting, who knows? You
true.
know, who knows what might come up. And I did an advert the other year where, I mean, this was for pies, and I spent half a day sitting in the sunshine on a bench in Manchester, in north of England, eating a pie, being filmed. So I thought, that's not a bad job, is it?
True.
So, um, but yeah, I think I would definitely, that the acting something I definitely want to push further, and would definitely, be looking for, speaking roles in, film and TV as
One
well.
one question
Um,
thing I'm
yeah.
I'm kinda curious about before I let you go. Uh, what was the audition side like for last show at Mr. Chardish? What was that experience like getting those sides? Like how was it described to you so that when you were sending your audition, you understood what you were doing? Because obviously with video games, things are so secretive sometimes.
Yeah, I think what was really, really good was, I think we went through trying out a number of different styles and deliveries. And then there was obviously one that hit the mark, with the developer. And we also had actually we had a Skype call as well. So that was really useful, in terms of being able to talk through the game and show some of the ideas and some of the artwork. And this is what we're trying to do. So that was really, really important. And then, yes, to land that was just amazing, because I, didn't go in with an expectation, because, you get a second audition, it doesn't necessarily mean, you've got it. You don't know whether it's they like you and they just want to double check, or whether it's between you and five other people,
Right.
or whatever. So yeah, so that was just an amazing feeling of getting that. And then I think once you get that, the next thing that comes in is probably that natural fear factor of like, I've got to go and deliver this now. You know,
Yep.
so there's the excitement of getting shortlisted and, auditioning and the rest of it. And then you get it and you go, right, okay, I am this character now. The whole thing revolves around what I do or don't do. And then, and it's one of those things, because you don't know how these things are going to land. And, I remembered, this is typical, isn't it? I was halfway through recording it, and I was just looking for some, I don't know, just frame of mind, getting inspiration, ideas. And then this thing popped up on YouTube, and it was basically people looking at old video games, sort of anime type of, video games,
Mhm.
and then really criticizing the voice acting in it,
Oh
and
god.
you know, where like the character dies and the hero's there,
Oh my
no,
god.
you know, that
It's
type of thing.
Devil May Cry, Dark
That's
Souls,
it. Yeah,
what?
no, what? You know, and I was thinking, oh, right. And then so when the reviews started, you know, the game, I'm like scrolling down to see and then there was a lovely one where, you know, pros and cons or whatever, you know, as often people do on these things, and voice acting was the pros, and I was like, oh, you know, whew, you know,
My
because it's
job.
my job. I've done, you know, because I like that sort of you know, that feedback, because I need that as a, you know, because
Yes.
I'm, you know, contributing towards that, and you just don't know what's going to happen. You know, that this could be a game that is a little sleeper game that gets picked up and moves on, or you know, it becomes a cult status, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that is. I mean, obviously, that'd be lovely if that happened, but
I would
you know,
love this game to have more attention than it has had in the last, because I was browsing YouTube one day and I must have been watching like a little game called Dragon or something, and the suggested videos was, if you like this, you might like Ars Fabuli, and I was like, what in the world is Ars Fabuli? And I clicked on it, and it hooked me instantly. And so I went looking for it. I don't know if it was changed to Mr. Chardish over here, or if it's still called Ars Fabuli over in the UK. Like, I don't know what was with the name change. But I was afraid the game hadn't gone through or something, because I couldn't find it under Ars Fabuli.
yeah. I think you know well, I mean, I wasn't party to the discussion of the name change, but it made sense, you know, to because I think it was art based, and maybe that having a name like Ars Fabula would make it too art based, and might sort of preclude a lot of people thinking, well,
Right.
that's whereas the last show of Mr. thinking, all right, well, what, I think that leads more on to investigate, as
Yeah.
opposed to Ars Fabula. Maybe it sounds a bit, you know, sort
And
of like a, you know, oh, well, oh no, that's too highbrow for me, or that's not, you know, what's that about, you know?
yeah.
So, you know,
Well, I can say that this has been a lovely conversation, and thank you so much for joining me for this. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak to you.
oh,
I
thank you.
really can't wait to see what you're gonna land next. Either watch, listen, play, whatever title has you as part of the cast. Now, if you wouldn't mind, like, plugging your socials or your social media or your website or wherever people can find you in your works and keep up with your acting journey.
Yeah, no problem at all. Well, so you can find me as Guy Slocombe voiceover on Instagram. So I haven't got any weird title. That's a straight one there. And then all the W's at guyslocombvoiceover.com as well. Um, so there's the sites as well. So might be toying with a bit of TikTok as well. Who knows? That's in
That makes
development.
that makes
Yeah.
this seems to be where everybody's going. And also, of course, you can follow me at Faith Jacobs official. Official. I can speak. Blooper. At Faith Jacobs official VA on Instagram as well as Twitter. I do have a website through Wix.com. And I will plug all of our respective social medias below, of course, in the description. Mr. Slocombe, thank you so much for being my guest,
No,
and
you're welcome.
I cannot wait to see where you go next.
Oh, appreciate that. It's been lovely speaking with you. And hey, we'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Bye bye.
All right. Take care. Cheers.
You
Bye.
too.
Bye.